Okay, so today for you guys, I'm going to do a full recording of a description of the human design graph. And I'm going to pull it up right now so you guys can see it. And I'm going to go through it and detail it fully so that you can have a full understanding of what all the columns and sections mean when you look at a human design chart. So this one is the May lunar eclipse 2022, but you could look at it as a person. I just didn't want to put maybe you know someone born on that date. It's a powerful manifesting generator chart. If you look at it with all those individual channels straight from the sacral up to the top. So I'm going to start detailing both sides of the columns and the center column. And I'm going to close my image for a second so I can read the write-up that I have. Hopefully you guys can still see my cursor. So what you'll notice is the first thing we have, of course, is the birth information. Now, genetic matrix gives us both the moment of birth and the 3 months prior to birth, the 88-degree solar arc, birth of the spirit coming into the neocortex. So someone was born May, as we have this date, May 5th, 2022. And the birth of the design column, the design part of the chart 3 months before, you see this red column here, is going to be February 5th, 2022. And so these are the two birth charts that represent these two columns here. Genetic matrix being the most detailed chart we have of human design presently. Now, what we're doing essentially in human design is finding where in time and space in this lifetime, where the spirit is in relation to the solar system, all the stars and the planets that surround us, whatever they are, whatever this construct is, where the spirit is coming into this kind of circle and construct of time in reference to the points represented by the planets. And so what we're finding is you right in the middle of it. Now in astrology, we divide the sky up into 12 signs of the zodiac. In design, we split the sky up into 64 sections. And this relates to two things. Firstly, it relates to the hexagrams of the I Ching, the Chinese Book of Changes, in which there are 64 hexagrams, each one of which contains 6 lines. The second thing it relates to is the human genetic code, with our 64 genetic codons associated with 6 bases. So there's always been an exact correlation between the hexagrams and the I Ching and the human genetic coding. So what we're doing in design is we're creating the parallel between the two, and we're reading the genetic marker for this particular avatar or vehicle in which your consciousness finds itself trapped in for this present lifetime. Now, in the top left-hand corner, or rather just right in front, right-hand corner of this particular PDF, you're going to notice there's 3 columns of information. The one in the middle contains, well, let's start with the 2 on the side. So the one on the left contains the glyphs that represent what we have in our solar system. So if you look here, this is the red column. It's called the design column, so it's unconscious. And it represents all the particular frames we have in this construct, which is, we see here, starts with the sun, Then we have the Earth, which is always opposite. Then these two uh, horseshoe shapes are what we call the nodes of the moon. This is the north and this is the south. These relate to one's destiny in this lifetime and also the environments that we attract in this lifetime, the environments we live in. And that we can get into detail in readings and solar return readings. The sickle shape here is the moon. These additional shapes, additional glyphs represent Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They each represent and signify different themes in the life. For example, Jupiter represents your law, and Saturn is where you're punished if you don't follow your law. Neptune is where things are hidden from you in a way and clear, like a mist is over it. So whatever gate you have in your Neptune, it's going to be things that you really don't even see clearly, whatever that gate represents. And then Pluto represents the truth you're coming to terms with in this lifetime. Now we can also move over to the right column over here, where we have numbers coded in black. And this is according, just like the left side, it's according to hexagrams between the numbers of 1 to 64. And then a little number on the side, which is a line number between 1 and 6. So at the time of this person's birth, this would be a lunar eclipse. What we would notice is that this particular chart shows that the sun was sitting in hexagram gate 2, line 2. And so this person's solar essence would be embodied with this yin energy of the second hexagram. The first hexagram in human design represents the strongest yang force, while the second hexagram in human design, or in I Ching, represents yin energy. Now, everything in this right-hand column here relates to the moment of birth when you came out into the world and had conscious access to everything around you. So these gates all represent what you know about yourself and what you can watch yourself living out in this lifetime. We call this personality information. This is the mask you can watch yourself wearing as you live through your life. I'm going to go back to what we were looking at prior, which is the red-hand column here on the side. Here, everything is coded in red. So this is a second calculation, which, as I had said, represents 88 degrees of solar arc before you were born. So this is 3 months before your birth, sitting inside your mother's womb, waiting to come out. And then comes the moment when the neocortex is ready and turns on, the spirit enters, and you get your first information into this life. And what you receive is your whole genetic inheritance. The red is unconscious. It represents the part that cannot be seen, kind of like the underworld or an iceberg, the part of yourself that can only be kind of intuited. A lot of what I noticed in people that are very psychic is they're able to access the awareness of these gates. But not everyone can really access it until they're told or shared with. And then there's a realization, yes, that makes sense. That represents my energy. And so we're going to move now to the third column of information I spoke of, which is this kind of Kabbalic graph, which is which we call bodygraph, which contains 9 energy centers. Now you'll notice some of these energy centers are colored in white, and some are colored in green or yellow or pink in this particular coloration. Now, the centers are connected by what we call channels. Each center does represent an organ or gland in our physiological makeup. The centers, as I said, are connected by channels. There are 36 channels in a human design body graph. Now, these energies are always moving and trying to get to one place, and that is the throat center in order to manifest into the world. This is how we manifest into the world, through our throat center. And so we have a lot of pressure in this throat center, which represents our thyroid and parathyroid glands. And so here's where many find trouble, whether you have it defined or undefined. In this case, it is defined. So what this represents in this lifetime is that we're all trying to get our energy out into the world, out to manifest. And some people have direct access. Some people have open, undefined throats, and they don't have consistent access. There's really no good or bad part in human design. We all have access to the energy. The planets are always moving, and we're always getting access to different gates, especially as the moon and Mercury move so quickly. They're always touching upon different gates, giving us access when we need it in order to manifest into the world. I'm going to pause here so you guys can kind of take that in. If you have questions, you can, this is going to be on a live, so you can add it in and I can address some of those questions. I'm going to go over now something called overlays. This is where we have a gate that has the same hexagram number on the unconscious side as on the conscious side. So if you look at this chart here, we have one overlay, and it's Pluto, which is in gate 60, line 3 on the conscious side, and 3 months prior on the unconscious side. It's also on gate 60, in this case, line 1. And we see that here on the root center. And you see the way that genetic matrix colors it in is it splits it between the black and the red color. Some of the other graphs, like Jovian Archive, they have it in lines across. So when someone has an overlay or has at least 4 or 5 or more, it's usually someone that's very aware, that can see themselves doing things. It's a represents a self-reflexive capacity to see what they're doing and others are doing. So it represents like a higher state of reflexive awareness. I'm going to share some more insights into the chart. This kind today, what I'm doing is just a representation of the graph and the columns to get a very cohesive kind of a simplistic, straight understanding of the body graph and how it works. I'll add a couple things now that I went over most of the details. These little right and left directions, these 1, 2, 3, 4, are called variables. And they relate over here when you look at your genetic matrix design. It's actually not on this one, is it? Yeah. It's partly on this one. It's actually, this is an older version. Oh, here we go. Now we can see the whole thing. So the design side would be these right and left arrow facing variables here. And the triangle and the circles on both sides represent the line numbers of the I Ching. And they have different meanings relative to the design side, which covers type of brain, the type of determination, cognition, environment, and environment style. This is represented by the right and left side that I'm column next to the red column that I'm circling here. On the right-hand side, we have, this is the personality column. We also have two variables here, both right and left facing as well. And these represent here, when we look at the personality, they represent the type of personality, the type of motivation, the type of sense, the type of trajectory, the type of view perspective, the type of view, the transferred motivation, and the transferred view. I'm not going to get into all of these today, but I will get into them next time, as they're very interesting, representing the energies that we're moving towards in this lifetime and the energies we're moving away from. Whereas the design side previously went over on the left-hand side column, those variables represent our specific determination and cognition and environment style. So kind of environment meaning the type of area we should live in. In this particular case, it's valleys. Some people have mountains, some people have artificial shores. There's many different ones. A couple other quick points I'll go over is you can read your human design graph. One way of reading it for fun is just reading it by the lines, numbers, the 1 to 6 line numbers after the point. So for example, on this chart, we have someone who has second lines 3 times, and they have first line 2 times. They have third line only once, and they have the 5th line twice, the 4th line 3 times, and the 6th line once. And so just through the archetype of the lines, you can get insight from the nature of the personality of such a person. This person has a pretty good balance of all the different lines, but with the most amount in 4, this is someone who possibly puts their heart forth. The 4th line represents the heart. And the nodal environment is also 4th line on both sides, which is interesting. And even though it's 4th line, it's different gates, different particular gates. So it'd be interesting to look at the particular environments that this person tracks into their life. I'm looking to see any other tips I could share. You'll notice that in a human design graph, there's always centers that are defined and centers that are undefined. Some manifesting generator charts actually have every single center defined. Have you seen this? It's pretty interesting. But mostly we have centers undefined when we look at a human design chart. And sometimes, they're all undefined, in which case it would be a reflector chart. This chart has access from the sacral to the throat, and that represents a manifesting generator chart. If there was no access to the throat, it would be a pure generator chart. And it would just have this, maybe some other channels like this one here, but definitely not this one in addition. If it was a manifestor chart, it would have access from one of these channels here to the throat, sometimes over here as well. Projectors can have channels that don't access the sacral at all, or any of these 4 motors. And so for projectors, it would be, there's 3 types of projectors: mental projectors, energy projectors, and classical projectors. They each have different types of channels. And I think that covers it for the types. I'm trying to think if there's any other insights I could add. I will say the open centers is where you're conditioned by the outside. It represents energy that is not you, but that can come in and lock you into patterns of being. So if you notice, for example, this root center, this is a person who would be pressured by their environment to energetically move about and get charged with doing things. And once conditioned, it would activate the unconscious gate 38 and 58. And it would also activate 60 and 52 also in the root center. And so this would automatically push this person into certain patterns of being, which they could or could not be aware. They may or may not be aware of. Of course, what we do in human design is we bring conscious awareness to the unconscious gates, hexagrams on the left-hand side column. By calling them out, a human design reading will give someone conscious awareness of how these centers are activated in their lives and when they are activated. I think I'll leave it at that for now. If there's any questions, please, for this live, add them below and we'll try to address them. One more thing that I'll add is I'll just go over the description of these particular aspects here. If you look on this human design graph, we have the type, pure manifesting generator. We have the profile, 2-5, which is represented by the first two glyphs of the personality side, the sun and the earth. You see the lines 2. And then on the left-hand column, the design side, the sun and earth are in gate 5. So we have 2-5. We call this the hermit heretic. The definition is single because all the channels are connected to each other. Very unique chart in the sense that we have channels all the way from the sacral through the G center, throat center, Ajna center, and crown center. And they're all connected. And this we call single definition. The right angle cross in this particular graph is the Sphinx, second version. Strategy as a manifesting generator is to respond in the energy field and to initiate and live life in response. And the particular themes of a manifesting generator are going to be satisfaction versus frustration, and I would say anger, being that the manifesting generator has attributes of both a generator and a manifester. Hope that was helpful for you all and clear. And feel free to add questions below and I will address them. Thanks.